My name is Catherine Cusimano. I work in the Career Center at East Baton Rouge Parish Library on Goodwood. This is a second presentation about the rights of an applicant with disabilities with a focus on accommodations. So, the first steps in requesting an accommodation. This process can be initiated at any point during the application period. It can be before, during, or after the interview. You also do not have to have a disability beforehand in order to request an accommodation. If you end up with a disability in the course of your career, you can still request accommodations. It can also be once a job has been offered or anytime after beginning employment. It is up to the applicant on when they may want to request these accommodations. This does not mean that you have to reveal explicit details, but the presence of the disability will be revealed. However, it is important to note that you may have to add additional details in order for your employer to provide you the proper accommodations. So, some examples of accommodations: requesting an interpreter or a reader. This can be provided either in person or virtually. An accessible location, having a ramp, an elevator, etc. This can be requested for any and all steps of the process. You can also request technological aids, such as screen readers or captioning. You can also change aspects of the facility, so you can change office locations in case the original location was just too noisy or too distracting, or the various processes that the company uses in this job. So, when to request accommodation can and should be done as soon as you feel that it is necessary. Requesting specific types of accommodations is also your right. If you request them as soon as you feel that they are necessary, this gives the employer time to acquire those accommodations. You may have to clarify why a specific accommodation is better versus another one. You also don't have to explain your disability, but you can say, in your experience, you are more comfortable with this accommodation versus a separate accommodation. Okay. If push comes to shove, you may just have to state that you can only work without accommodation, and if they're not easy to work with, then the company may not be the right fit for you. Being specific in your accommodations will benefit you and the employer. Submitting accommodation requests on paper via some kind of letter is typically the best way to provide that detail. Being specific includes specifying which ones you feel work better and how they will help you perform the task at hand or meet expectations. Requesting testing accommodations. Testing material. If the test does not measure the skill affected by the disability, they must provide reasonable accommodations. So, a test for a proofreading position, which will be written or typed, a blind person can be accommodated by having an audio tape version or having a reader. However, a person with dyslexia cannot be accommodated, as being able to read properly is a requirement of the job. So, examples of some testing accommodations: extra time to take the test, an interpreter or reader for help with your test instructions or any questions that you may have, an accessible location, a different format of the test. This could be audio tape, this could be braille, it could be larger print, anything along those lines. Could also be digital. You may not be able to write properly or hold a pen properly, but you can tap an iPad. This is not a comprehensive list, and you can find out more information about other kinds of accommodations that may work better for your particular situation. We talk about reasonable accommodations in relation to requesting accommodations. This term is mostly related to employers. So, any accommodation that equalizes access for applicants or job workers, for making the facility more accessible, a change in peripheral duties, acquiring or modifying electronic devices, changes to training materials, provision of readers or interpreters, change in scheduling, and more flexibility in hours. So, undue hardship. An employer can refuse an accommodation request if it will cause an undue hardship on the business. This is a very difficult thing for a business to prove. They have to prove that it will cost too much money, be too substantial, or be disruptive to their process. So they have to prove that this is the case, and they have to clarify that they have made other options available. The proof will have to be detailed and reasonable in order for it to qualify. If the company is too difficult to work with, again, you may want to consider that they're not the right fit for you. Some accommodations are not covered, such as personal items, such as glasses, hearing aids, canes or other mobility devices. And also, no accommodation can be done that will lower the quality or quantity standards expected of every employee. After requesting an accommodation, you may have to discuss the situation further with your employer. This could be your boss, your supervisor, HR, whatever the process that company has. Because they may be unfamiliar with your disability. You may have to explain why you need this specific accommodation. You may have to explain why some alternative accommodations will not be adequate for you. All of these points are very important in determining the best accommodation. Again, you don't have to specify any personal details, you just have to say it's not adequate. So, examples of how some accommodations may be specifically better than others. If a person who is blind requests an accommodation for a test, not all accommodations are adequate. Not all blind people learn Braille, so therefore a Braille test would not be adequate. An audio tape version would be much better. If a person who is hearing impaired or deaf is offered a captionist or written material, that may not be adequate for that person. A lot of deaf people do not learn English in the same way. A lot of them are more comfortable communicating in ASL. Requesting accommodations will and should be an ongoing process, but it can and should be on your own terms. The information we provided will hopefully assist you in a better job-seeking experience. Feel free to contact us if you have any further questions.